Okay, so this is my final project submission for Evangelism and Apologetics. I am sitting in a car with one of my oldest and dearest friends. Um, his name is Tristin. Say hi, Tristin.
Hi, Tristin.
And Tristin has agreed. He has given his consent to recording this, and I have briefed him on what we're going to be talking about today. And what we are going to be talking about today is just beliefs. Not, it could be religion. It could be beliefs about the world. It could just be thoughts, just random thoughts. But we're just going to leave this open and see where the conversation goes. So without further ado, I guess we should start as most of us start
In the beginning.
Well, we all have a beginning. No, but like, what religious system or religious beliefs were you raised on?
So I was, especially in organizations like Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and stuff like that, they do tend to have a lot of like a Christian foundation. My mom, I believe, was raised Baptist. So I grew up in at least on her side, I'm actually not sure what my dad is. I believe at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he responded with atheist. But my mom, especially with those kind of organizations, it was definitely at least some form of Christian. You could probably say non-denominational. My mom didn't ever want to push a certain religion on us, so she took us to different types of churches. Granted, a lot of like meetings for those organizations and sports and stuff like that were in churches. Like, it's very rare not to see like a scout troop in a church for their meetings.
Yeah, I remember when you got when you were bestowed the honor of Eagle Scout. For some reason, this sticks in my head. For some reason, maybe because it was new to me at the time, but I remember the ceremony took place in a Lutheran church.
And it was just, I think that one was down to just the venue availability.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest. As far as like you're looking for a stage and seating, it's just like who is offering their area. Like, we probably could have easily done the exact same thing at your church in the multi-purpose room, and it would have been the same thing. But I think like a church gives a little bit more of a grandiose feeling, and since it was a more of a big honor, they were looking for it.
Yeah.
But like, especially with scouts, you're talking about how in like scout mottos and oaths and stuff like that, it's, a scout is trustworthy, loyal, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. I will do my honor to God and my country to obey the scout law. So like,
That's fascinating that you remember that. And
I
didn't know that was.
Yes, so there's a whole bunch of there's badges and stuff like that that are very centered on more of the Christian part of religions involved in Scouts, which personally for me, as I got older, like nowadays, I don't like that being part of Scouts, mainly just because I feel it closes the doors on people. Growing up, and now I still think Scouts was invaluable as far as skill sets, whether it was like first aid, discipline, or leadership, or just even community. And now I hate the idea of closing doors on other faiths, whether that is atheistic or Muslim or Jewish, because Scouts are like, this is a Christian organization, no one else. And unfortunately, you don't notice it as much as a kid, but as you're older, you go, man, something like Boy Scouts was pretty close-minded to a lot of things, and excluded whether it was, gay scouts or gay leaders, even down to like female leaders, which of course, my mom, she was pretty much the middle finger to anyone who told her she couldn't do anything they could. So, that was kind of a shame. But so growing up, a lot of it was very Christian based. We didn't go to like church regularly or holiday wise. My mom kind of left it open ended for us to kind of like figure out what we wanted. As far as I know, she's still in that kind of realm of Christianity.
Yeah.
I've dated Christians and Catholics and everything outside of that as well.
Yeah.
But
okay.
That would be, I guess, my religious origins.
Yeah. So, do you? So many people, as they grow older, they come to a place where they feel perhaps a sense of resentment because religion was thrust upon them at a young age, but that doesn't sound like that was your experience.
No.
Do you appreciate that of your parents, that they gave you more of that open-ended freedom?
My dad wasn't really involved in any of that. Dad was dad. He worked, and I saw him for, projects when I needed them or something like that. But I appreciate that my mom left it open enough to let us kind of like find what we worked at. Like at no point did she pressure it. Outside of Scouts, unfortunately, in order to continue, quote unquote, leveling up in Scouts, you had to do these activities. And but then like I would do. I had Lutheran friends at the time, and so I would do church events with them, and just going. Like, I guess it's weird because I did all these things, but at no point was that religion really part of who I was.
Right.
I think at one point it was like, do you believe in God? The answer was yes, because that was all I knew at the time.
Sure.
But I don't know. Religion was never really a major part of my life outside of those things. And again, with my mom being very on pressure based when it came to that kind of stuff, it never, I guess, became a issue.
Yeah. So, at what age did you leave Scouts?
So I got my Eagle Scout at 16, and technically they kick you out at 18, where you can then become an adult leader. So I probably left at about 18. But by then, I would say religion had changed for me. And I would probably say about that 15, 16 is probably where it started taking the opposite direction of a turn.
Okay. So, tell me about that, because we're entering into Satanism, which of course has a lot of unfair stereotypes. A lot of I guess most religions have
Right.
misconceptions about them, but I remember as your friend definitely being shocked by that.
Right. Which then it was a learning opportunity for me to go, well, this isn't the occult. Because technically the term was Levian Satanism, which was,
right.
the name is to some degree a shock and awe kind of a direction to go with. But it was primarily an atheistic religion.
Right.
So about this point, I had started having a falling out with. I guess it was kind of like that. Kind of like I didn't like churches or organized religion, and of course this is where like views. As you get older, you start developing your own opinions and your own beliefs, and so especially with a lot of organized religion and churches, and especially because we do technically live in the South. Um, I started developing gay friends. I started developing women and people of color, and unfortunately, there were churches that weren't very open to those kind of things, or people who would become atheistic and that they were like shunned by things. Like
Right.
I had a friend who was a gay atheist scout, and he was like he couldn't let anyone know, because if anyone found out, he would have been shunned by everyone. And I hated that idea. And you could say that it was, the bad apples of certain groups that really turned me away from a lot of religion. And so for a long time, it was, I don't not believe in God. I guess that would be like the agnostic thing, where it was like, I'm not Christian. I believe that if I live a life that of just good, at one point it was, I don't know what I believe, but if I were to die today and go to heaven, and there'd be like the judge, Jesus is there and he's here to judge your life. He wasn't going to judge me on like, you love gay people, get out of here. It'd be like, cool, you loved people, you lived a good life, welcome to heaven, kind of a thing.
Right.
And I held on to the hope that would still be the regard of what it was like if you were, for example, a Christian who was hateful towards other people, but they were like, but God loves me, so I'll be fine. And they'd get there, and they're like, you were mean. No. Kind of a situation.
Gotcha.
But, and then that was kind of like that decline into more of the, I dived into atheistic. I was also an angsty teenager. I'm an old school goth. So there is that edgy, shock and awe of like, oh, what's this Satanism that I'm going to learn about? But then I found a lot of, belief in the fact that it was atheistic, which I had started to become.
Right.
It wasn't like we worship the devil. It was they used, if I remember correctly, it was like Satan was a symbol of power, so it wasn't like we worship it. It was kind of like, here's our mentor to some degree, where it was, you live the life of indulgence. You do the things that make you happy versus abstinence. You don't blindly forgive people who purposely wrong you on purpose. It was like, no, that's not okay. And then there was also just the fascinating thing of like everyone assumed they knew what it was. And you could probably say that since I was an angsty teenager, I got pleasure out of telling people that they were wrong. Like, oh, you worship the devil? It's like, actually, that's not what it is. Oh, you sacrifice kids and babies? And it's like, no, actually, that's very against that religion, where, kids and animals were seen as the purest forms of life, so we would never harm them. So there was a lot of things where I liked, I was just fascinated on learning this new topic, as well as I loved just the idea of like, be who you are but harm no one else. So there was, and it fit the ideals of like, it's like you could be gay, straight, bi, any LGBTQ plus. You could be, white, black, brown, whatever, any POC, and it was just like, be who you are, do what you enjoy doing, just don't harm anyone. And there was a whole side where there was like, the magic part of it, which I imagine was more of kind of like the what is it? We speak it into existence kind of a thing, but they phrased it in the form of spells. But I never really got into that part, because then that even faded out after a while. Where I still identified it as that for a while, but no one really asked me. It's like, what's your religion? What's your beliefs? But it was sticking around the atheistic thing. And then that kind of wavered back and forth between, we don't know. But I will say, in this time frame, it definitely became the science first and foremost. Evolution and things like that. But I at certain points it was like, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. There very well could be the option of some form of a god, a deity, a power that started it all. And then it was just the continuing of learning of how certain religions were giving opposite sides of the globe. They had super similarities. But I will say that, even to today, I still have a hard time with organized religion.
Okay.
Because everyone has a different interpretation. That's why we have 8 different churches on the same street, because that church may believe everything you do but one thing, but you go to the next one and try to form it to fit your ideals, and I never really liked that.
Yeah. Do you do you feel that is unique to the Christian faith?
No.
Okay.
I believe that is 100%. I think it's almost a human nature type thing. So I think you could probably find the exact same thing with any other faith. You have, same thing with like you'll see Jewish people who they live very strictly, and the other ones are like, yeah, you can eat ham. That's bacon's good. They pick and choose what they want, but in the end, like, in my opinion, it's if you have a good relationship with what you believe. Like, do I think that a Christian will go to hell for not adhering to everything their church says? But if they have a good relationship with God, live by the golden rule kind of thing, then it'll be good. It'll be to their benefit in the end. And that would be the same thing for any other religion. I very firmly believe that live a good live a good life, live free, die well, kind of a thing.
That's a good point. Could you touch on that mantra a little bit? You don't have to go into the whole history of it, but could you tell me?
Yeah, that's definitely one of those things where like I as a person wavered between multiple faiths and beliefs because that was the death of a friend when I was 17 in high school, and it's definitely one of those things where you're in that point where you don't know what you believe, like, and you're 17 and you still think that you have time to figure everything out, but then a death is, for lack of better terminology, though, is a come to Jesus meeting.
Yeah.
Hey, so that is one of those points where it's like it's hard to see. Again, you're struggling back and forth. Atheistic, agnostic, Christian, and you're just like, how do I process this? And I think it left me on the more of the agnostic side, where I think it was where I realized that I wasn't going to be able to change anything, but I was praying more that he could hear me say my goodbye, which I still believe, like, or I like to believe that he was, and I've written, papers about this or stories or whatever you want to call them about my experience in that moment.
Yeah.
So.
But you were able to kind of immortalize his memory through this mantra that he kind of lived by.
Yes.
Which is live free, die well.
Right, which I'm pretty sure is from the Scorpion King movie.
Okay, that's new. I don't think I ever knew that.
I mean, I'm not totally familiar with it. I believe because it was supposed to be one of those school projects where it's like, what's a quote? And of course, I probably did something wrestling based. But when he passed away, it was something that we used because again, he was a very, very pure spirit, very bright energy that was in life. So using the live free, die well is like live to your true self kind of thing, and he was very big about helping people. So it was very much that mantra kind of like moving forward. It was kind of like almost he's like, well, this is my new religion: is live free, die well, care about people around me, take care of them, love them, and in the end, when you die, whether there is an afterlife or not, you know that you can at least die well, knowing that you've made a positive impact.
You have that tattooed on you.
Yes, I do have a memorial tattoo with the phrase on the tattoo incorporated into it.
So do you still does that still hold true to you, or has it morphed? Perhaps it has become more true over time.
It's one of those things where like I have it tattooed on my leg as a symbol to myself to as a way to ground me. It's on one of my legs. It's supposed to be kind of like that spirit to keep with me, which is why I also plan to get on my other leg a tattoo for my dad who is supposed to ground me in a different way of being the adult responsibility. So it's almost like the two spirits of them are supposed to be kind of like my foundation. But as I got older and stuff like that, it's what I aspire to be. Fighting depression, fighting anxiety, and stuff like that will always be a struggle. But I use his memory, and what I in my heart and my memories he stands for as the my I guess my faith and who I want to be as a person. Um,
Yeah.
and do. But yeah, that kind of left me more agnostic or even still atheist. But I think it was a lot more to the agnostic of the, like, we don't know
Yeah.
what's out there, so I don't discredit things.
Okay.
Like this is where and this is as I get older, and again in that spirit of him, it's I don't run up to a Christian and be like, you're wrong. I don't run up to someone who's Muslim or anything. I genuinely more ask questions and find out more about people and their faiths and how they differ from one another. Like it's like sit down and have a conversation with someone who's Muslim or Jewish. Or Christian, or versus like Christian versus Catholic and stuff like that. I'm more likely to just ask questions out of maybe sheer curiosity, or sometimes just to have people get heard, so they feel like they actually have a voice.
And that's actually, it's the point of this conversation, in a larger sense, it's the point of this class, this concept of evangelism. Um, what I'm learning, and kind of where we'll land at the end is the importance of honest communication and conversation. Um, But before we land there, I want to bring us to today, and maybe um, if I was to guess the timeline, probably between the last 2 and 5 years, um, where you have started to incorporate some pagan beliefs uh, into your makeup.
My repertoire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably, maybe the last 10 years, if we were to really stretch it out, there's probably inklings of it. But yeah, over time, I looked more into my ancestry and found my Scandinavian and Nordic roots. And I started, just learning more about those. And of course, I had the general interest about them, whether, the Vikings, the Norsemen, and all that stuff, and then their religious things, and there's always like that interest in mythology and whatnot. But I started aligning myself more or finding things aligned with what I was already doing.
Right.
And that kind of, since it lined up for me that way, I started looking more into the pagan traditions, and uh, you could say that it's just like the religion kind of matched up the hobbies I was already doing, or my upbringing, and I enjoy them. I feel more connected with ancestors, or I just enjoy it. It makes me happy.
Sure.
Which to some degree I would probably in some cases argue like that's kind of what it is. If it makes you happy, why discredit it as a part of your personality or your faith or anything like that? So yeah, I started leaning more into like Nordic paganism, or in some circles heathenism, or there's a couple other names.
And could you just quickly name off some of the perhaps like
The big boys.
some that perhaps even um, secular minds or just other people would be aware of because of popular media.
Yeah, popular media has made things like Odin, the Allfather, which is, he's equivalent to that of like Zeus or, other, the father gods. Thor, his son, and, again, one of those top ones. Loki, you have Freya and Frigga, tier, and and very much in that same style of other like mythologies. They all play the roles of like gods and goddesses of sun, moons, thunder, mischief, magic, healing, fertility, and stuff like that. And they kind of become those focal points for, uh, you know, rather than like, like for example, if I were praying for in more in the Christian style, you go like, there's the one person you talk to, there's the one conduit.
Right.
Whereas with these other ones, you focus on that deity, and they're like, I guess, they're major in in the deity powers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff with like runes and stuff like that, which kind of again feels a lot more in the speak it into existence. Your energy is focused more on that, and as well as a lot of it is a connection with the earth that we're on as well, and there is a lot of it that's like live free, die well, and of course this is where you start getting to things like the warriors dying and going to Valhalla if you fight well and honor the gods and stuff like that. You get to dine in the halls, Valhalla, eating and drinking and fighting and having a jolly good time. And that's, of course, that's one of like 100 different halls that you could end up in for different reasons. But it definitely kind of leaned into that live free, die well mentality. But if you were to, and this is where it's weird because like for me personally, since we don't know, I don't sit here and go like I believe that Odin and Thor,
Are waiting for you on the other side.
right.
Right.
Because it very well they could be it could be like in some of those like popular medias where there is you die and then you just show up at one of the many heavens, or you show up at heaven and like, well, that door over there is the Norse people, there's the Christians, those are the Jews, like it's like one big heaven, just like different rooms for different people.
Yeah.
It very well could be like that. It could be none of that. You could reincarnation could be a thing, and so I guess like as we come to today is I practice more pagan stuff because I enjoy it. It makes me feel connected to my history, my ancestors, the planet I'm on. But I guess agnostic is kind of I don't discredit the option of God or gods or goddesses. But in the end, I just kind of try to live my best life.
As sort of a sweet bookend to this, I want to talk about your wedding ceremony. You had some elements of a traditional Viking wedding when you got married. So obviously, as you say, there's an element of your heritage in that, so there's inherent value in that. What did your wife to be think of that, and did it? Was she resistant to it?
My wife is someone who would have just gone to a courthouse and got married without thinking about it. However, we live in a state where that's not an option. So we had to have at least some, like, we had to have an officiant come out somewhere and do something. So originally I wanted a big wedding. It was something that I wanted to do. So we were the polar opposite ends, where she was like, courthouse, I wanted a huge Viking wedding. I wanted a long boat. I wanted it on a beach, near the woods and stuff like that. But especially after going through other people's weddings and seeing how expensive they are, how much stress and stuff they were, and she was already kind of like folding on some of her desires of like the smallest possible wedding and no people, and because she was for a long time very adamant against marriage as a concept. Like, why do we need to have the government sign off that we're in a relationship? But she knew it was important to me. I was like, because I don't know, I know it's important to the government, or like if I go to the hospital and they won't let her see me because we're not married. She's just classified as a friend. But going off topic. So I think she was glad that we went small. I had caved on that. But other than that, she kind of just let me do my own thing. She knew it was important to me.
Excellent. Well, and it ended up being a really intimate ceremony, and I didn't get to attend the ceremony, but I was happy to be there for the reception.
You were there for the second ceremony when we did the hand tying.
Yes, I was there for that.
Which arguably was more important to me.
Right.
Because that was officiated by a friend that was in front of friends, and it was more of that traditional kind of thing versus the first one was, a lady in a suit showing up, reading out of a binder.
Right. So, I want to now flash forward a little bit to my wedding, where something very interesting and unexpected happened. My wife and I got married, and it was kind of we were getting toward the end of the reception, and Tristin comes up to me and my wife and pulls us aside out into the lobby or whatever you call it, and he takes our hands, and he's just sharing in our joy and just expressing his love and his heart. And he asks to pray a Viking blessing over our union, which we were happy to receive. And so he's holding both of our hands and praying fervently, perhaps more fervently than I've ever seen.
Probably.
And over the course of our almost 30-year friendship, never once have I seen you cry until this moment. And I don't remember the exact words, but I remember feeling your hand tight around me, and again, just that fervency, the sincerity of your prayer. And so, do you remember anything that was going through your mind? Clearly there was those weren't just words to you. What was the significance of that moment?
I mean, you could probably say that some of the core part of it is you can harken back to the loss of a friend, and you because it then becomes like tell your friends you love them while you can. You never know what happens, and especially because you said we've been friends for over the course of like 30 years. At a certain point, I was glad to see you getting married because we've seen each other through ups and downs of relationships, and at certain points it does feel like are we going to find someone who is a perfect fit for someone else, whether it's you talking about me or me talking about you. And so there's your wife coming into it and being very much that perfect fit for you is always good. And then I mean you had a more traditionally Christian wedding. And there are times where that kind of leads to me being on the outer edge of things. It's like in my life in general where I'm the straight guy surrounded by LGBTQ community, and I love all of them dearly, but it's like, I'm the odd one out here. But in that moment, it was like, hey, I waited to more towards the end of this thing, so I could just give a little piece of my core. Tristin, the Viking clown friend who is in your life, who your parents just can't get rid of for some reason. So I just I wanted just a small moment that was, again, with our friendship being as long as it has been. It was like, hey, here's just you and me and your wife, and we've talked about how your wife has been very accepting of all of your friends and she loves everyone dearly. I kind of wanted to make it so that this was, a moment where, she knew that I was, very much, accepting her into the circle. I mean, it's not like I ever made it unclear, but in that moment, it was like, hey, here's me giving you a piece of me, and to both of you, and especially as a couple, and with the blessing the way it is, it's a good foundation. It's a good overall basic thing. Plus, when people are getting married, it never hurts to have it fire, all the help you can get. Even if you have all the power and love of God, if Odin throws some wisdom your way, but here's an extra helping of it, because the general structure of it, and it's not a very uncommon blessing. It could be for giving someone who's about to go home. But it's like, Odin give them wisdom on their way, Thor give them courage and strength, and Loki give them laughs along the way.
Yeah.
And of course, I probably went much more in depth.
Well, it certainly meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to us to have you as part of our wedding party, and we ended up having a lot of people in our wedding party and in attendance of our wedding from many, not only religious backgrounds, but culturally, in regards to sexual orientation as well. So yeah, that was a very, very special day for us. So where I would like to end now, and let me just say that it has been a doozy conducting this interview in a car on the way home while trying to pay attention to directions. So I appreciate you bearing with me in that regard. But where I want to land is, I want to do more than just listen. I want to grow and change. So as I listen to your story about going from agnostic to atheist to Satanist to pagan, and maybe a few stops along the way.
Just spun the twister wheel and said, let's see what's we are now.
What would you say what is the best advice you can give to someone of the Christian faith in regard to communicating, relating to, and living with someone of your faith and belief system? And that can include how in your experience, how we fall short.
It's tough because I think we run into the problem where, I don't want to tell anyone how to be their religion, which of course is like that number one thing is that you'll say is like, don't push your religion down my throat. Where unfortunately that's, any religion has the bad apples that make problems for everyone, and like stuff like pagans aren't any exception. There's plenty of things like white supremacists who are trying to grab hold of the Norse deities and use them for wrong things, and you can kind of run into the same thing with any religion. So it is the challenge of like, someone's like, oh, I'm Christian, and you're like, oh, well, get away, I don't want any of those, because they have that freak notion. It's hard for me to kind of like answer that. I mean, I guess the first thing is like, don't try and force that on someone else. Like when you have people knocking on the door, going like, "Hi, come to our church. Your beliefs don't matter. Mine are the only one that matters." Is the feeling that you get when someone's knocking on the door? Like, have you heard the word of Jesus Christ? And you're like, I have. I don't want it. Why are you here? But that's it's. I never want to tell anyone how to live their life, and because I'm a prime example of I changed my mind so many times, or I had different reasonings, and a lot of it was done on my own. Like after Christianity, it was like, okay, I'm on my own to figure it out, and I ask questions. But I guess it is treat everyone with kindness. Don't force it on anyone, but always leave the door open if someone wants to learn. And I would like to hope that there's room for love for people outside of what, you know, and it's tough because I'm always trying to be a pleaser, not be judgmental on anything, because there's always like, stuff like the Bible that has rules, but we follow some but don't follow others, and people pick the ones that they like and they go, these are the rules now, which is where we talked about the different churches. 8 on the street, they each have a different belief system from the same book. But I believe whatever deity or whatever, even if there isn't one, treating people with kindness is the number one rule. If they're gay, they're straight, they're trans, they're POCs. If we're talking in the Christian point of view, like if I were a Christian today, it would be that these are all God's children. God made them this way for a reason. He didn't make someone gay as a scapegoat or a focus of anger. They didn't make someone trans because it was a mistake. It very well could be a believing someone can change and we can still love them for who they become, kind of a thing. And it comes down to those things of treating people with kindness, treat people the way you would want to be treated, and live free, die well, kind of the combo of those two. And so this is me long-windedly say, open the door to questions if anyone has it. Don't force it on anyone, and be kind.
All right. That's some great advice. Good takeaways. And I hope that that I, as a friend, embody those things to you.
No, you're awful. We're doing this interview.
And I just want to say thank you again for indulging me, and hopefully my teacher will be blessed in listening to this. And yeah, this is a great opportunity. And here's to 30 more years.
30 more years. Oh gosh, we're gonna be old.
That's a good place to end.